Hi, this is Tina with Rehatch Designs, and today I'm just going to do a little video on little golden books and where I get them and how I pick them and what I, just how I decide, to do them and that type of thing. I had some subscribers asking me questions about them because I just did a series on little golden books, and they're very curious, and I thought I would answer some of those questions today, and then I'm gonna have a part two because I can't go over everything all in one. Someone wanted to know how I do my tassels for my little golden books, and it really just depends on the book that I'm making and how I make the tassel. But this simple one that I did on my series, I maybe might have time in this one to show you how to do. If I don't, then I may just do a whole video just on tassels. Okay, this is a flip through. I had just done this one for Easter, and I'm actually keeping this one for myself, and the other one I gave away in a video. But just to give you an idea, this is how I have come to start doing my little golden books. I tend to not decorate them that much, simply because of the fact that I found when I was doing them that a lot of people kind of like them undecorated. They like the pages ready to go, and they like, the outside decorated, etc. But they want to be able to go and add their own things. So that's kind of how I make them. But then, I have decorated some to the hilt. I think at Christmas time, I probably did 25 little golden books, and that wouldn't have been so bad, but I did 8 other journals, Christmas journals. So I honestly, by the time Christmas was over, I was so burnt out. And it wasn't until this last series that I did more little golden books, and I love doing them. I really love doing them. I love the colors in them. I love that they're so different than, the normal journals that we do. Especially I do a lot of shabby chic kind of things like that. And I just really love doing them. And I think they always turn out so cute. And I can think of so many uses for them. And most of the people, and I ended up selling some, by the way, at Christmas. That's what the 25 were for. I have 6 siblings, and they all have kids, and their kids have kids, and stuff like that. So I was making some for each family to have, the grandmas to have for their grandkids, and then for the moms and dads to have for their kids, and that kind of a thing. So that came to be a lot. But then I also had some people that saw them that were begging me to make some for them. And I've gotten to the point where I think, and I also had some people wanting me to do some custom Christmas journal orders. And that's kind of why I don't, I've never actively pursued selling my journals, but that's kind of why I don't do custom orders, is that kind of thing. And it's not just the journal thing, it's different crafts that I've done. When I end up selling them, I usually don't have a hard time selling them. And then what happens is I get inundated with people wanting things, or I feel like I have to make a ton or something. And I start losing the joy of doing it because I'm in a production type environment. And I mean, I could probably craft 6 to 8 hours a day, don't get me wrong, I love it, but I like to do what I like to do, and I like to do it the way I like to do it, and I like to do it when I want to do it. So basically I like doing how and when, and I don't like being in a situation where I have to have X amount done, so I think this year, rather than not sell at all, and there's a reason behind the selling part, I'll get to that in a minute, I am going to probably make things and just make them as I go and put them in my Etsy shop. I'll do flip throughs, and if somebody's interested, then they can just buy it, and it'll be already done, and they'll know what it is, what they're getting. And so I won't do anything custom, but I am going to put those out there. just because I have so many, and if you're not familiar with my channel, I do give away a lot of my journals. I tend to make them and give them away, which, I've done to family and friends already. So now I'm at the point where I really enjoy making them, but you can only keep so many around. So I do have a thing called Friday giveaways, and I give away things from my stash that I have too much of. I give away journals, and I'm going to start probably this next week. I'm going to start giving away journal kits because I have decided that I have enough stuff that I could divide up into journal kits, and I may sell some of those also, so that if people want to, kind of do a craft with me thing, they can purchase these kits, and they're going to pretty much be at cost, because just well, not even really at cost. They're going to be what it costs to ship, pretty much. That's probably all that's going to, maybe a dollar or two more. That's it. So those will be a pretty good deal. But it's just taking the time to get them all together and that kind of a thing. So I've got to do that. But in any case, I wanted to tell you that on the giveaway Fridays, all you have to do to be a participant in that is be a subscriber, make a comment on any video during the week, and that puts you in our little drawing. And if you watch one video, make one comment, then you're in one time. If you watch 5 videos and make 5 comments, then that's 5 times. Maximum 1 comment per video. And so then I draw those names on Friday, and I start over the very next week. You have until Thursday of the following week to contact me with your information to mail it out. And if you want it, or you claim it, you'll get it. If not, it goes back in the pot for the following week. That prize goes back in, and we start over again. I do pay up to $10 shipping, and if it's over that amount, then you can decide whether you want it or not. I'll contact you and say, hey, it's X. Do you want to pay it? If you don't, then then I'll put that prize back in. Anyway, that's the giveaway thing. And I thought I'd bring that up because I did give away my other Easter journal this week, and it has been claimed. Okay. Anyway, so I'm just going to show you kind of how I do the undecorated generic journal. Not going to do a full flip through, but in case you haven't seen it, I do have flip throughs out there. But usually I do a 2-inch spine. I do sew the buttons on the back. I love how that looks. I think it's really cute. And of course I always try and match the buttons to kind of the cover. This had more of a pastel-y kind of look to it, so I put that on there. I make a tassel. Usually on my little golden books I don't put charms, but I did at Christmas time. I put quite a few charms on them, and I'm not going to say that I don't, but I usually don't. This is just lace and ribbon, and usually it's the same kind of ribbon and lace that I put on the inside, and it's just a very simple tassel, and I put it on just a bulb pin and a clip. And the reason I do that is if you want to put it in front so it doesn't cover the buttons, you can, or if you want to put it in back, or if you want to take it off. Okay, so that gives you the option of doing that. I used to do a lot of the elastic band closure with the oh, I forgot what you call them. Well, I'll come up with it later. But I just, maybe I have some right here, so I'll show you. Are they in here? No, they're not. Oh, well. Okay. But anyway, so I used to do those, and then I got to where I really like the bow on the side, so I tend to have been doing this where I put an eyelet and then I put the ribbon in. So I think I have been drawn to that. It just decorates a little bit more. I usually always put lace on the outside. I use some sort of material. I use burlap on this one, but it'll be a cute material or whatever. I will cover up, and I didn't do it on this one. This one is for me, but I need to put this. I will cover this up normally if it's been written on. If it hasn't, I leave it blank. And I usually, if the back of the book and this part are in good shape, I don't usually cover those. And on my undecorated ones, I do put lace on all the pages. I do not fold or cut my pages on my little golden books, and there is a tutorial out there, Little Golden Books Part 1, that I show you how I do that with the cover and how I reinforce it so that you do not have to cut your pages, you do not have to fold your pages. And I usually do 2 signatures, and the reason I do that is because there are 2 signatures in your little golden book. And so I keep the pages intact and I reinforce the pages. And when I say that, with this lace is not just decorative, it serves 2 purposes, actually 3 purposes. It actually kind of reinforces the edges on the pages. And on a book that's not super old, that's not that big a deal, but I tend to purchase a lot of really old vintage books and they start getting brittle, and this actually reinforces the pages. The other thing that it does is I do keep my pages intact and in order, so that it acts as a tab, and I only put the lace on the book pages. So what that does is it allows you to flip through if you want to and go to each of the book pages, and it will go, you can go all the way through, and there you go. I mean, so I think that serves that purpose. The other thing that it also does is when you do your little golden books and you don't cut them at all, the pages, and you don't do anything to them, they may stick out a tiny, tiny bit from the cover, the smallest amount. And rather than trim that off, by putting the lace on these pages, what it does is it gives you this edge here, and it's all pretty and lace. It doesn't stick out too much. And so those little edges, you won't not even notice that they're sticking out, or they're even the tiniest bit uneven. So it actually makes making the book easier, okay? And I also think that doing it this way with the full page, not only is it aesthetically, I think, nicer, but I also think it's easier. And if you watch my tutorial, I won't go into it, it's really not that hard to reinforce the cover so that you can do that. So I would recommend doing it that way. There's lots of different ways out there. You know, I've done all the different ways probably that you could think of, and my first books were all, you know, hit and miss on deciding, you know, which way I like. And I love this way. I just think I think overall it's easier, and I think aesthetically your book ends up, to me, nicer. And of course you can decorate your pages. I usually, in my pages, I put the different papers in it. I put the bags. I use scrapbook paper and, you know, different types of paper. But I have gotten to where I really don't, I just really don't do a lot of decorating in them. So, but that is totally up to the person that makes them. So anyway, I did want to kind of go over this, and then let me show you. Somebody asked, okay, so where do you get your books? I get almost all of them off of eBay, and there's a reason for that, is that I don't know, I guess it's just a kind of I've gotten this thing where I like to collect the vintage and the rare books. And some people, you know, don't think you should be cutting up those books. I actually think, because of the way that I do them, and I'm you know, reinforcing the pages And I think a lot of people will use these and it'll wind up being some sort of, scrapbook type family heirloom that I'm preserving these books. So that's kind of how I look at it. But, everyone has entitled to their opinion. So anyway, I get most of them there. I don't pay a lot for them, but because of the kind of books that I purchase, I pay more than you would your just average little golden book. Okay. For instance, I'm going to use this as an example. Here is a Peter Pan and Wendy, and here's another Peter Pan and Wendy. Okay, they look the same, right? But they're very different. And the reason they're very different is that this one, even though you will look in here, let me see if I can make sure I get that in camera. If you look in here, the illustrations are identical. They're not any different, okay? So you can see that, right? But here's the difference. This one, and there's two little ways that you can tell this. This one is a 1969 edition. The original copyright is 1952, and I do have quite a few original books. But this is a pretty vintage Peter Pan and Wendy, okay? And I tend to gravitate toward the vintage ones. That's the ones I like to collect. If they're, in decent shape. And, of course, decent shape has different meanings depending upon how old they are. But anyway, this is to me, that it's, it's worth a little more. Okay, so that doesn't mean that I won't collect these, okay? And I have, obviously. But if I make two little golden books and I go to price them, I'm going to charge more for the vintage one than I'm going to charge for this one. And the reason being is usually I've had to pay up for the vintage one. Okay, now some people don't care that it's vintage. Okay, interesting thing is I gave out several vintage Christmas books that I had made into journals at Christmas time. And some people that I gave them out to were just blown away that they got these beautiful vintage books. The other ones didn't seem to care at all. I mean, I could have just went into Walmart and got them a book, and they would have, a little golden book, and they would have been just as happy. So, that's part of the reason, and I was getting into why I'm going to sell some of my books, is I figure if people go through the trouble of purchasing my book, then they really want it. They want that vintage book. They care about that. And for me as a person, when I'm making this stuff, I kind of want the person to want it. And that's kind of why I got the idea that I probably will sell some books for that reason, or journals. Because I've given away quite a few, and I know that some of the people that got them just don't care that much about it. Others love them, don't get me wrong, but other people are just not into it, and that's fine. I'm not judging those people. I'm just saying that I just think if I sell them, then maybe the people that purchase them are going to really want them, okay? And they may not sell at all. I have no idea. But I really haven't had a trouble with that. But I'll just say that that's kind of where my head's gone, where I've changed my mind. And I do give them away a lot on my channel because most of the people that are subscribing and commenting like junk journals, or they wouldn't be watching my channel. So I have no problems giving them away. Trust me. Okay, so anyway, that's what I'm saying, is that it's not that I wouldn't purchase this book, okay, and I will. And it's not that I wouldn't make a journal out of it. because obviously the illustrations are the same, okay? But I really enjoy getting the older ones and using those, the vintage ones, to make journals out of. I like them being vintage, okay? So anyway, that's what would go on there, okay? So let me go on to this. So then I would buy that, you know, like this one I would probably end up getting off of eBay because it is more vintage and it'll probably cost a little more. I mean, you know, up to $10, simply because it is a vintage one. Whereas, you know, or 15 or 20. Yeah, depending upon the book. It could be, and you know, I build that into the pricing. You know, just because it cost me more to get it. And this one, you know, this one I would purchase, and I would probably get these in a stack. A lot of times I've bought 4 or 5 at a time, and I've only paid $10 or $8, you know, for them, and maybe $2 shipping or something like that. And, you know, so these are a lot more affordable. And if you're just starting out, I would definitely go toward this, okay, until you feel comfortable. Because I actually, when I purchased mine, I accidentally got some vintage ones in a lot, and I actually put those aside and worked on the other ones first, just because I wanted to feel more comfortable doing the more vintage ones and knowing what I was doing. But you can buy the reproductions that have like the reproduction covers and things. You can buy these a lot of times even on Amazon. You get them in Walmart. Just type in whatever title you want, or just little golden books, and you can buy those. You know, I think they're $5 now or something. If you see the prices on some of these and you're like, oh my God, they're $5 now. But anyway, you can purchase one like that and use it. And, you know, now a lot of these, like this book is, what year is this one? It does not say. See, that's like a lot of the newer ones you can't tell. It's interesting on the older ones, they usually will have it out there. I am guessing that this is late 80s or 90s because it has a UPC code. And that's one way you can tell. If you cannot tell in the listing how old it is, if it has a UPC code, it's probably in the 80s or 90s or above. Okay. You can tell by the back cover. You can tell by the inside cover how old they are. Okay. That's another thing. So this is a newer one. Okay. Which, like I said, is not necessarily a bad thing. I don't like the UPC code on front, but if it does have one, I will find a way to cover that. So I don't have a problem doing that. It's, you know, I don't know if I did. This book had one on the back, and I prefer that. Okay, this one's a little bit older. Let's see. This is I think this one was 1970s. Oh, I'm sorry, 1980s. But a lot of times, too, if you can't tell how old it is, look at the price. And the price will kind of tell you what era it's in, just by that. It may not tell you specifically how old it is. Interestingly enough, like, see, this one's 29 cents. Those are usually the 50s or 60s, which this one is 1969. So 29 cents. And a lot of times, too, if you're looking and you can't figure out how old it is, you know, do that. A lot of times I've seen lots where they'll have 4 or 5 together, and there's only 1 or 2 that are vintage out of the group. And so you can, you know, get a couple of, well, a lot of times it'll be vintage, get me wrong. I guess vintage is 70s and 80s, and I guess some people even consider the 90s. But as far as the really older ones, and sometimes the original editions, and you can tell by the price on there, okay, kind of how old they are. But in any case, as I'm rattling on here, you can get either one of these and use them and make exactly the same book, but like I said, I would charge more for the one that was for the vintage book, okay. Then I kind of wanted to show you these. These are ones that I purchased that these are very old. You can tell by the pages. This is an original edition, and this one, you know, if I make a book out of this, it's going to cost a lot more than even just the older one because it's an original edition. So that book, and it's only because it cost me more. I think I paid $15 for this, which is, or maybe more. I have to check and see. I can't remember. But here's another one. When you have the original editions, you know, you have to realize that you are going to pay a little bit more. So these are like 1950s, and you know, it's in good shape. So there you go. This is one too, and also check out the price, and you can tell how old they are. A lot of times too, if you look at the covers, are different. See the back of that? I don't know what the other back looked like on these. Yeah, see how this one? These are different than the newer ones. The new books don't have that. And you can kind of tell how old they are just by the back of it, and it'll have Simon & Schuster, New York. And that just gives you an idea of how old they are. Okay, so this one is Cinderella, and it's not that old, but it is. It's still vintage because this one probably is, yeah, this is 1974. So if you see the 49 cents, that's kind of in the 70s. But I would still purchase this, and I would still use it because it's in pretty good shape. And I don't worry too much about some of the little markings on here because I tend to fix those up a little. I clean it off, and I just think people buying these are not expecting them to be in perfect shape. But in any case, that's one I would buy, okay, because it's popular and, you know, it's still vintage, okay. This is a Howdy Doody. This one is a pretty hard one to find. So depending upon how hard it is to find, that also would determine price too. This one is pretty old, so, and you can tell by the back. So on this one, you know, it's a little bit more rare. So, you know, you're going to want to, you know, price that accordingly when you do your book. And because of that, you know, your overall book to me is worth more, okay? So that's a more rare one, so you would want to take care of that. This is a little kind of a rare one. Let me put that in that stack. This one is Surprise for Sally, and this one is 1950. So that one, you know, would be, you know, priced accordingly. So okay, so I had several of my books that I just did in my flip through that I did that were Eloise Wilkins, and her books are kind of sought after books, okay. Her illustrations are so pretty, and they tend to be books that, even if they're not super old, that people are collecting. So you would pay a little bit more for those. And then depends on the book too. If the more rare the book, the more you're going to pay. This is kind of rare. And so this one, even though it's not super old, again, would be priced accordingly. This one is, and I did my other ones, this one is an original edition, and it's very old. This one is 1952. You can tell by the pages, and that's what another thing too is what the pages will be a little bit more brittle. The other thing to notice in the really old ones is normally you're going to have two, like this one is not that old. You'll have two signatures, okay? So you'll have your two signatures, like I think that's the middle of the two, isn't it? Yeah. You'll have your two signatures, and there'll be only 12 pages. But in the really old ones, what will happen is I don't have my other prayers for children out, so I could show you this. But they'll have like a few extra pages in there, and the pages will be, you'll have more pages in it than you would your original version. So that's, when you're making your book, that can be kind of confusing. But also, that's what's unique about them, is that it's the original edition. They didn't have the two signatures like they did the other ones. And so you have to kind of lay out your book differently. And so you will see a lot of the pictures will be in the new version, but there'll be extra ones in the storyline usually is the same, but there's usually a few extra pictures or something in them, so that makes them kind of unique. Okay, so if you get those. But anyways, Eloise Wilkins, those are popular ones now that people are purchasing. The other thing is the paper dolls ones are really popular. I bought these, and I actually was kind of bummed because it was kind of misleading. The person that did it didn't say that all the paper doll parts were cut out. They said the book is intact. Well, the book part is intact, but the paper dolls are not, and that's the reason I bought it and paid the price that I did. But anyway, those are kind of popular. The paper doll wedding is popular, and toys, and Tex and his toys, and it has little toys in there that you can cut out and use. If you can get those whole, they're going to be worth more than, you know, your average book. The other thing is that some books that came out were, you know, they're not going to be 1950s or 1960s if in fact, you know, the story didn't come out or the book wasn't produced until later, like this one. This is an original book, but it's From Trash to Treasure from Sesame Street, because Sesame Street wasn't around that long. So anyway, this is a 1993 book, but it's the original book. So so that would be worth more, you know, even though it's not a 1950 something book. Okay, so that's something to consider. The other thing, Christmas books, and here I'll show you a couple of them that I've done. This is one that is not vintage. Okay, so it did have a UPC code. Now, I say it's not vintage. It's older, and it's just what people classify as vintage. It's not super old. I think this one was 1980s. But that doesn't mean you wouldn't want to purchase it, because, you know, there are titles that are just super popular, and if you're making them, you know, for yourself or whatever, what does it really matter? If you're making them to sell, I would just recommend, I had people that passed over some of the vintage books just to get the title that they wanted of the new book, which to me I wouldn't do. I would go, wow, I want the really rare one, but they want a certain title, and the popular titles, I mean, they're thinking of their childhood and what they liked. So for instance, this was Frosty the Snowman, and let me show you kind of along the same lines of how I did these. Again, these are just scrapbook papers, and then I did not decorate. I did do a lot of pockets and things in these, which I did not do in the other ones, but in any case, you know, that's kind of how I would do these, and I did not decorate them just because honestly I was getting to the point where I couldn't do anymore. It was so crazy. But anyway, so this is popular, so I would not be afraid to get those, and I think this one was 1980s. Yeah, it's 1980s. So anyway, but then like I said, this one is older, Santa Surprise Book. And here, let me show you this. This is what I said. Don't worry so much about if it's scuffed up a little bit, because a lot of times on the really older books too, the ends will be worn and that type of thing. And I'll put the little end pieces on and end protectors on there. But this one's older, and so when I sold these, even though these books are made identical pretty much, I sold this one for $10 more, just because this is a vintage book, okay? And I mean they're pretty much made almost the same inside. They're not really any different. I don't know if I can undo my thing here. I don't think there's any difference. Oh, there is some difference. I did not on the necessarily always, and I might do this later, but I didn't always necessarily put the lace on the book pages on the newer ones because they were in good shape. I wasn't worried about anything happening to them. But on the vintage ones, on all the vintage ones, I always put the lace on the edges because it did reinforce the edges because they're more brittle. So that's one thing that I always made sure that I did. It's decorative, but it actually did serve that purpose. So that like when you're pulling your pages up like this, you're not gonna, because that's where you'll find if you on your vintage ones where they crack is on the edges there. So that is something that I did do that I didn't always do on these other ones. Okay. All right. Let me give you an idea of the Christmas ones real quick. Okay, so these are the vintage Christmas ones. This has, I hate when they had put these tags on there, but I use a goof off to get those off. But this is a popular one, and it's, this is, let's see, 1972. The copyright's originally 1952. But that's still vintage enough that, you know, I would pay a little bit more for that, okay? Not a ton more, but a little bit more, okay? And it's a popular book, so then I would purchase that. These are very vintage, and this one is 1964, Jingle Bells. So, of course, I paid a little bit more for that. Rudolph, and again, like I said, look at the backs of the books too if they show the pictures in the listing, and you can tell how old they are also by the price, okay? Because a lot of times they won't list how old they are. If they're really old and they're first edition, most people will do those. Like this is a really old first edition, and this one, let me see, what year is that? 1950. 51. And also you can tell some on the first editions too, if you go back and look, not only will they have the odd amount of pages like this one does, but sometimes the print will be different than the newer one, which is interesting, I think. Anyway, like, okay, let's see, I'll bet you this one's different. No, this isn't, because this is an older one too. And so these I would pay more for, just because obviously they're worth more in general. Okay. This one is a first edition, and it's not in perfect shape, but you know what? It's very rare. And that's one reason why I would purchase it. Okay. But like I said, not everybody's going to appreciate that. This one has writing on the front of it, and it's a first edition. But usually when you get these that old, they're not going to be perfect. I will say that, okay? I will try and get some of that out, but if not, probably what I'll do is I'll put some gold kind of rub and buff around the whole thing, and it'll just kind of blend in, and it'll be okay. All right. This is another first edition, and this is very old, and also this I have to show you on the night before. This is what kind of, at Christmas time when I was saying the person didn't seem to appreciate it, they were like, oh okay, it's old. And I'm like, oh my God, you have no idea. This one, you'll see it has the additional pages in it, but what's really cool on these is that they have this like gold gilding. I don't know if you can see that on those. And it's really, really special. But anyway, this one is obviously worth more than just a regular Night Before Christmas. This is another original first edition. This is, and then again, also check the back of the books. You can tell too from that. Not just the price. You will see this is the one that's reproduced a lot. So if you go to get the Night Before Christmas, this is the one that they reproduce a lot. And it's actually the version, I think, because see, I think this green cover of this one looks, I think, a lot better. But this was the original one that came out, and then this is the new one. But interestingly enough, it has the exact same pictures. So, and this one is very old. So, it doesn't have the gold on it like the other one does. So I don't know if they made two versions, like this was the more expensive version and then this was the cheaper version. I don't know. I think this came before that one. But in any case, that is the, those are the two. Alright, and then here's another one. And as you can tell, these two were about the same time. So, and then here, this is one that is, or actually I have two of them. These two are pretty old. Let me see if I can find a date. And again, these won't be in perfect condition. So you'll have to, maybe put some washi tape on some of the pages. Definitely put the lace on them. But to me, that's what I'm saying by rescuing these books. They're going to last a lot longer after you deal with them than if you just, if you were to just, use the books separately. So anyway, so these are some that I would collect that I like doing. But like I said, they all have the newer version if that's something that you would want to do. These are not super old, but they're still ones that I would collect. Like, see, these are all, let's see, 1976, so they're still vintage. You can tell by the price, that's about the 70s. So they're all vintage. They're all very collectible. This one is probably, oh, this is a really old one. Yeah, this is one of the older ones. So, okay, so I think probably there were two editions of this, and they had the gold gilded, and then they had the ones that are not. But again, this has the extra pages in it, so that's kind of cool. Here's one that is not super old, but it's, 1970s. So, like I'd say, I would collect these because they are 70s, they're in good shape. A lot of times you don't even have to really pay up for those at all. So usually it's just the really old ones that you're going to pay, but pay attention to the price and then you can kind of tell how old they are. The other thing to think about too is the popular, like I had a really hard time finding this one. Okay, there are just some out there that are just hard to find, and to me those are worth more. Okay, so this is popular, so obviously a little harder to come by, but it's worth getting and making. These are all popular books that if you are making them, people will want them. So I would get those. Okay, just because, right? The other thing to consider too is you may want to get not just little golden books. There are these little wonder books that are worth, like this one is a first edition of The Night Before Christmas. So that to me would be a cool book to make. And this is the Merry Christmas book. And, that's a first edition too, so that could be cool. And you may want to get this just even for the pages. It doesn't have to be little golden books. You would make them pretty much the same way. This one, the cover is the spine, and it may be just the way they made their spines are kind of messed up. But I have a way that I fix that, and I guess I'll do a video on those to where you don't have to cut those pages either. And I have found that the Wonder Books are kind of like that. I have no idea why. Maybe it's just the way that they made. I think they just, if you look at it, they just put like a little piece of board back here and then paper over the spine, over where the pages are. And it could be that that's what happened, is they just weren't as strong as the golden books. So, but anyway, I have a way to fix that, and I can show you how to do that. I guess I'll have to put that on my list of tutorials to do. The only other thing I would say too is if you're going to get a vintage book and you're going to get it at a good price, don't worry about things like this. Like, see how this cover is kind of messed up? You can fix that and make it look pretty good. You'd be surprised. And usually you can get them at a good price. And honestly, by the time you put it back together, and I just smear a little gold, and you can add like a little decal or something here. I mean, you can use that book. And like this one, it may not be in perfect condition. I think some of the pages were a little tiny bit ripped, but you can fix those, and it'll still, see how this cover is? You can fix it. I mean, so don't not buy those. When you get them that old, they're not going to be in perfect condition. Anyway, that is my little thing on my little golden books. And like I said, depending upon the kind that you want, you can get them from different sources. But when I don't have any of my original ones. I think I either gave them all away or sold them. I'd show them to you. But you know, if you were just starting out, I would definitely like, see, these are not older books. I would just get, you know, a gently used one, or you may have some at home from your kids or something, or grandkids. Try those first, and I would recommend doing that before you start cutting apart the vintage ones, because honestly, even though I don't think they cost me that much more, I just had a hard time cutting those up and not, you know, being that comfortable with making them yet. So let me get that over there. Anyway, I would just.
I'm not sure I understand.
Oh, that was my Siri. Why is Siri doing that? That was weird. Okay. Anyway, that is all I had to say on that topic. So If you have any questions, just let me know. And then I did have somebody want to know how to do the tassels, so I don't think I'm going to have time for that because I just looked and we're close to time. So I probably will do another video just on tassels. So anyway, stay tuned for that, and I hope this, helps some people out. And we will see you another time soon. Thanks.